Assalamu alaikum, my name is Kurutul Nadeem and I'm a student. Now, as a student, I was surfing the internet today and the topic of my focus was climate change and global warming. And well, I came across such alarming and perplexing statistics and figures that my immediate response to that was that I need to make a video on this and I need to spread this message to masses. Because in that very moment, I realized how damaging my actions as an individual can be for the atmosphere that I live in and for the environment that I live and breathe in. The Earth's atmosphere, it can be by no means taken for granted because life as we know it may become, or rather, it will become non existent because it not only provides us with the oxygen that we require to live, it also protects us from the harmful ultraviolet solar radiations and it keeps the temperatures of the living earth habitable. Now, there's this one thing that I came to read about that the chemistry of the Earth's atmosphere is remarkably stable, which provides us with a preferably safe environment to live in, even for the plants and for the animals. However, even the slightest bit of change in the quality of the air that we breathe in can have profound impacts on our health and on many human lives. Now, why do I say that the Earth's atmosphere is remarkably stable? Because that is evident from the climate history of the Earth. The humans, they've imposed various and major changes on the Earth's atmosphere, and yet the atmosphere has survived. It is resilient to those changes, even though it is undergoing those changes. Now, the humans, they've increased the abundance of carbon dioxide up to 45% since the beginning of the industrial age. These are major changes, but the atmosphere will survive. However, even the most advanced societies that we may know of today are fragile as compared to the atmosphere. Now, the Earth's atmosphere itself is associated with various cycles. For example, the water cycle, the carbon cycle. And as resilient as the atmosphere may be to changes, these cycles are not resilient to changes. And the scientists, they've observed various transformations over the past 30 years. And what they've observed is that the precipitation patterns are changing, and they've observed changes in where and how the plants grow. They've observed changes in sea and land ice and the entire ecosystem, like in the tropical rainforests. And well, the half of the increase in carbon dioxide concentrations in the last 300 years has occurred since 1980, and 1/4 of it since 2000. Now, that is a rapid pace. Methane concentrations have increased 2.5 times since the start of industrial age. This is a rampant pace. And if we don't do something about this space, we may never be able to curb this. We may never be able to reduce this space. And life, you never know, may become non-existent. Now, World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, it compiled a report which highlighted the urgent need for the development of concrete actions which may halt global warming and the worst effects of climate change. Now, according to that report, the period of 2014 to 2019, this 5-year period, is currently estimated to be 1.1% above pre-industrial times from 1850 to 1900 and is 0.2% warmer than 2011 to 2015. And this time period of 2011 to 2015 was already considered as the hottest since records began in 1850s. Now, the glacial loss for 2015 to 2019 has been highest for any 5-year period. Sea level rise plus the process of acidification, they've accelerated, and scientists have observed that this increase has been 26% as compared to the pre-industrial ages. Heat waves, as we already know, have been the deadliest weather hazard since 2015 to 2019. And July this year has been the hottest month, which witnessed unprecedented wildfires in the Arctic. For the first time, scientists are compelled to believe that there is a serious conflict between the people and the nature, between the people and the climate. And if nothing is done about this conflict, the people may lose this race. And in the words of Antonio, the UN chief, we are losing this race, and climate change is real, and climate change is much faster than we are. And it is getting worse day by day. Now, speaking of the UN chief, we all know and we all witnessed that the United Nations General Assembly, it held a climate summit in New York on the 23rd of September, I believe. And what was mentioned there was that the countries, they've failed to achieve the targets which were set in 2015 when the international community came together and set targets and goals for the countries to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit the global temperature rises, to limit this temperature to 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees Celsius. And the countries, they failed to achieve those targets because what we've observed is that the leaders, they are not as ambitious as they must be to curb this catastrophic phenomena. And the UN chief, he was adamant that the governments, the leaders, the people, the nations, they all need to come together and they need to be more ambitious than they already are in order to achieve the targets which were set in 2015. Now, this is really alarming because we have not yet achieved the targets which were set in 2015, and we are already on the verge of destruction and environmental degradation in 2019. And a new report issued in this regard declared that even if the countries which signed the Paris Agreement met their targeted goals, the world would continue to grow warmer by 2.9 to 3.4 degrees Celsius because the current ambition to curb climate change and global warming, it needs to be tripled in order to reach the target of limiting the temperature to 2 degrees Celsius, and it needs to be increased fivefold in order to limit the temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius, as per the Paris Agreement. Now, technically, it is not impossible. It is possible if the entire global community and every individual comes together and works and paves way for the betterment of this entire race, in this entire human race. And if our leaders are actually convicted towards curbing and alleviating the adverse impacts of climate change and halting the process of global warming. Now, if we wonder how can summits like these help and mitigate the harmful impacts of global warming and climate change, such massive phenomena. So we must remember that when chlorofluorocarbons were extremely rampant in use, that was when in 1985 the scientists discovered the process of ozone hole, because they discovered that the ozone was depleting over Antarctica and there was this slight hole in ozone, and that is when the Montreal Protocol, it came into existence in about 1987, and which was amended in 2016. And in that protocol, the entire international community came together, and it was decided that the chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, would be phased out, and we switched to hydrochlorofluorocarbons, HCFCs. And what that did was that scientists observed that the ozone, it started recovering. So this shows the power of the international community coming together, deciding something and sticking to it, which means that the environment, it can recover itself only if we as humans and as dwellers of this planet realize our mistakes and try to neutralize our actions. And by coming together, by paving out solutions and by paving out ways to work for the betterment of this environment. And these days, we've witnessed a global climate strike from, I presume, the 20th to 27th of September 2019. Now, we witnessed a record of 7.6 million people who took to streets and who striked for the climate change. Now, this was the biggest climate mobilization in history. Now, what this global climate strike shows is that we have the power which we need to create a just world and to end an era of fossil fuels. We must also remember Greta Thunberg, who is 16 and who is a Swedish climate activist who delivered a very moving and emotional speech in the United Nations General Assembly. And if we hear her out, we may come to understand that this is the voice of many of us. This is something many of us are asking the world leaders, and she gave our sentiments a voice. And we need to spread her message as much as we can so that the world leaders, they may come to think about it, that indeed our future generations and the current generation will not forgive them for their mistakes if they do not do something to curb the adverse impacts of climate change. Now, what can we do in this regard? Firstly, we need to raise awareness amongst others, because many of us must be indifferent as of yet, and we must be unconcerned about what this phenomena is. So we need to talk about it. We need to spread this message as much as we can. What we can do is we can compel the governments to listen to us and to act upon their commitments, which they made to us globally and nationally. We can spread the message as much as we can, and this is going to in turn compel the governments to listen to us and actually work on their commitments and be more devoted to those commitments. We can act on individual levels, and we can change our routines. We can help the governments in planting more trees. We can help them in initiating such projects which are investing in our health and in our future generations. We can research, we can read, we can act on our own to understand and to make others understand what impacts this phenomena is going to create if we do not help curb it. We can, on an individual level, we can stop using polythene bags, and we can stop using plastic bottles, because we know that plastic is such a substance which does not decompose easily and which emits such harmful chemicals and gases in the atmosphere, which are actually very devastating for the environment. So we can stop using those things, and we can switch to recyclable substances instead. We can carve out paper bags, we can carve out recyclable utensils, we can carve out recyclable bottles. We can enable our children to make out such things which can be useful, which can be recyclable, and which can be less damaging for the environment. And we can learn about green energy, and we can spread this message to as many people as we can. We can initiate projects on our own, because we have the access to social media and we have access to masses. My voice can be heard among masses by just this video. So we can use this platform for actually something which can be beneficial and fruitful for us and our generations to come and our planet on which we live and strive. So I believe this is something which needs to be talked about more often, not yearly, but monthly, and making it to weekly basis. Because if we are harming our atmosphere, then the atmosphere is going to harm us back. And we can never win from the atmosphere, because these processes, these natural processes, they are much rampant and rapid than we can ever think of becoming. So we need to realize our duties as human beings and as residents of this planet, as dwellers of this planet, and we need to act upon our responsibilities, and we need to save ourselves, our plants, our environment, our animals, as well as our future generations to come.